Danielle, how you doing? I've got your workup. I want to talk about your three mock-ups. I think these are fabulous. Really, really good experimentation here. I would say there's a couple of things that I would recommend while working on branding, specifically logos. It's really a good idea to always start working in black and white, because then when we are looking and trying to decipher these relationships and these spatial relationships between the different elements in the mark and in the typography itself, we're getting this meaning added to the whole thing. So it's really difficult to study form while you're adding meaning with color. I hope that makes sense. So I always recommend that students, that any designer, work in black and white, preferably black on a white background, until you get the mark down. That way you're just studying form and not being influenced by any kind of outside meaning like color and the subjective ramifications there. Okay, so let me give you my recommendations here. All right, this is really a cumbersome mark, and I think we can really clearly see it when you're using it in these different live settings. It's too much for this is kind of a frail, not that it's a frail typeface, but in comparison to the mark, it certainly is. And we can see it here again. This is just too bulky and just too, almost looks like a gaming logo. So I would stay away from that. I just think it's too bulky. This one is interesting. I think it's a really interesting take on that D and T. I think it's just a fabulous take. So I'm okay with this. I think that you might even consider this. Okay, I wouldn't recommend red as your color. Black and red seem to be in terms of color psychology, they are prone to extreme behavior. Those colors that's what red and black indicate when they're shown together. So I don't know if you want to brand yourself like that as a designer. Plus, it's kind of stark. Okay, not very subtle. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't show a whole lot of restraint. Okay, and I think this is your best mark. I really do. I think this is super interesting right here. I think it's very interesting for a designer to present their name on the vertical. And I think this is a really interesting shape. I think it's going to be an interesting way to go. I really do. I would, again, recommend this one too. You're free to go in whichever direction you choose is the most appropriate. But I think one more final comment is that this should align with the top of the D, of course, because that is, let me see, maybe it does. Maybe it's just an illusion. But there's the top of your D, and you can see that N is hanging off a little bit. So that is indeed out of alignment. I think that this horizontal version of the logo isn't really working because the relationship between this type and this mark, the mark is small enough that even if we make it a little bit smaller, we're just completely losing the fact that's a pencil. That stroke on a D is a pencil or other kind of writing instrument. I think it's very, very obvious in this version here, so I would recommend going forward in this direction right here. Okay? Those are my recommendations, and hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give me a holler, and I will clarify. All right? Good job. Thanks, man.